I always knew that I wanted to do community work, I think, and at the time I studied social work was in the 60s when there was quite an activist movement going on, and so I studied community organizing, community development, and then finally went and studied psychology, and so that I could understand what motivates people, you know, because it's one thing to study social work, but it's another thing to understand the individual dynamics of what's going to make somebody a leader or make somebody involved or make somebody a good parent, you know. So basically I'm a social architect.
So you'll get a feeling for how much energy, creativity, experience, and opportunity there is in our community.
I got into leadership 25 years ago. I was the director of Mi Casa Women's Center in Denver. And I got a call from the Coors Company at that time that they wanted to start the National Hispano Leadership Institute and asked me if I would consider helping them do that. So that's kind of how I got into leadership. And I kept thinking, what we need is leaders. What we need is a lot of people that can create change. What we need for our community to move forward, we don't need 1, 2, 3 leaders. We need a lot of leaders in every sector. And as I was thinking that is when I got the call. So I say it was my destino calling me.
Everybody wants somebody to help them.
And now you teach it, obviously, in a motivational speaking
yes.
to young people.
Yes.
Why is this important?
For Latinos, it's important because we have a whole wave of young Latinos coming, and because we are not integrated into the history books and we're not integrated into the past of the United States, we don't know our own history, we don't know who our leaders are. And even the studies today say that people can't identify our leaders, and yet we're everywhere. And we're running huge organizations, and we're doing great things, and we're reforming immigration, we're working on education, and yet because our model is leadership by the many, not by the few, it's not one identified person. And I think we're very comfortable with that. We're very comfortable having many, many, many leaders in different professions and different sectors.
Back in the 50s and 60s.
What's the importance of the history and evolution of Hispanics in the U.S.?
What's really important is, number one, I believe that your history is your power. You know, where did I come from, and what have I learned from my parents, the people that came before me, and how can I take it to the next level? But second of all, we've got so many different groups. We've got the Cubans and the El Salvadorians and the Mexicans, and we're going through such change. They really appreciate the fact that they can learn about the history of Hispanics in the United States and what it took for us to get here. Then we know what it's going to take to get us to the next level.
You have said that you are Latina by birth, but a convert by choice. What
Yes.
does that mean?
I'm a Latina by choice because I assimilated and then I joined the Peace Corps. I went to Chile. I relearned my language. I saw how vibrant our culture is outside of the United States, because in the United States we were minorities. You know, we were colonized in a sense, and yet we were never taught about that. And so I began to retro-assimilate. And I'm a Latina by choice because that's who I am and that's who my ancestry is.
Question number.
Tell me about diffused identity.
I think young Latinos today, what the studies show is that they're identifying with being Latino at a higher rate than their parents. So we're going through a cultural revival. That's what this is about. We're finding ourselves as a people. We're beginning to have that unity. We're beginning to have an identity. We're beginning to ask the question, what is our unique contribution to America? You know, what is it that our culture is going to contribute to the future? So I think we're going through this revival, and that young Latinos, because they can hear Shakira on the airwaves, or they have the role models that have come before them, they're very comfortable with their identity at this point. They still need to learn about their history. They still need to learn about who are we as a people and come together in order to share that. But they're much more secure at, I'm a Latino and I'm proud.
And you're an author. That book that you wrote, why did you find the need to talk about culture, inclusion, and contribution?
I ran the National Hispano Leadership Institute, and I was very fortunate at that time to be part of the Kellogg National Leadership Program and to become a Kellogg Scholar. And so I got an opportunity at that time to work with about 30 leadership experts, mainly authors. And when they would start talking about leadership, I would go, well, that's not how it is. Peter Block writes about the lack of community in America, and I would say, we got so much community that I'm never alone, right? And they talk about the need for servant leadership, and yet we are servant leaders and we're community stewards. And so when I was with these mainly men, I would say to them, well, that's not really how it is in communities of color or for Latinos. And they said, well, then you need to write about it because no one's writing about that. So my first book was called Salsa, Soul and Spirit, Leadership for a Multicultural Age. And I looked at the connecting points in Black, American Indian, and Latino communities. And you have to understand it's a totally different model. It's a model that goes like this rather than like this. You know, in communities of color, particularly because we've been oppressed and minorities, the only thing we had was people power. And so our leaders are like masters at community organizing, at motivating people, at getting people to do the hard work of social change, at celebrating leadership, so we have this kind of si se puede leadership. And so I realized that there's not a comprehensive book on Latino leadership, and how are we going to move up as a people if we don't honor the traditions and understand how we got here?